Welcome, Fisker fans, back to another episode of Ocean Currents. Andrew and I are here today to cover some late-breaking news, some rapid developments, some changes that have been going on, both in our personal world and in the general world of Fisker owners. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Bill. How are you? I mean, I got my car back. That's
what I wanted to hear about. That's the personal part.
Yeah, that's the personal part. So we'll talk about that. But, as far as I'm concerned, having it back and being able to drive it yesterday for a little bit, open up the roof, 74 degrees and sunny out here. So nice. Perfect day for California mode. It was nice.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I think we started chatting beforehand. We talked about cloud issues. There's a lot going on, a lot of discussion. There was a town hall. There was a town hall guest that wasn't. There was a vote that was supposed to come that wasn't.
There was our special episode that we did for everybody. You know, all these things that we were trying to do in preparation and in sort of service of that upcoming change. You know,
I'll open the cloud issues up with. I'll just say disconnect. I'm friends with Adam Minier. Adam's EV, not chick kicking buddies, but we're friends. We communicate, share public information. Adam interviewed me a few times, came out to see my car when I first got it. So that's all, public knowledge. I get a text Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. Adam's like, "Is your car still connected?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I drove it at 8 p.m. tonight. I had Spotify on, everything's fine." He said, "Check again." So he was informed, and he knew, and I became informed at that point. That was the 15th of May that my car got disconnected. Sometime like around 9 p.m.
Basically.
Yeah, I found out from Adam. Yeah. And then, of course, it started to spread in many different places. You haven't had a chance to try your car out yet?
No, this is, it's funny. I've been watching the back and forth over the last, especially couple of weeks, as there's been a lot more sort of momentum and changes coming. And I'm just going, oh boy, I can't even participate in any of this stuff because I don't even, I don't have my car. I don't have any way to play with it. I don't want to mess with stuff that, doing anything remote. So I have yet to try anything. The only thing that I did notice on the drive back last night that I sort of paid attention to was seeing the 3G above the bars for the service. But I didn't, honestly, I just put on my Bluetooth and was listening to a podcast and just kept driving. I didn't even think to test out the other stuff. I also just wanted to sort of get back, but I will, I'm going to spend some time with it. I want to sort of catch up on all the things that everyone's been trying to figure out and sort of test. But I would imagine that if everyone lost their connectivity, I'm no different.
Right.
I can't see why I would be.
So getting your car back, people probably have heard why you didn't have it. Do you want to give a quick recap of why you're just getting it back and how long has it been?
Sure. It's been, I'm going to grab the invoice from right over here. So it's a great question as to exactly how long it's been. I want to say it's been at least 2 months. That they've had it, probably a little bit more. We're recording this was May 20th. We're recording. So yeah, probably about 2 months, maybe slightly more. So none of the doors were opening. And in fact, I think there was a story that we saw about a gentleman who had to call the fire department. I don't remember where that was. Was it in
Kentucky, I believe.
Oh, it was Kentucky. Okay.
Woodburn, Kentucky.
So someone, and forgive me, listeners, but I don't have Facebook, so I didn't read the full story. I just saw sort of some stuff, but it appears as though he got sort of locked into his car and the doors would not open from the inside or outside. That is a similar problem to what I dealt with. And the guys at Pat's Garage here in San Francisco, and the technician Dorian in particular, who spent the most time on this, were dumbfounded. I mean, I got a text from Forrest, I think yesterday. It said, we've worked on tens of thousands of cars. We've never experienced anything like this before. We've never seen anything like this. And this is a shop that works on the Karmas, right? That's their whole that's their bread and butter, is that they have sort of become the West Coast shop for Fisker Karmas, and they're big into the Fisker world. So I think for them it was surprising to not be able to come up with a full-time fix for this. Now, here's the irony. When I showed up yesterday to get the car, the doors are opening. So why that's happening, we don't know. They disconnected the 12-volt battery a couple times. Upon reconnection, the doors would seem to open. Not all of them. They seem to be very sporadic. They did replace my driver's side door handle under the recall. So they took care of that for me. They also replaced the 12-volt battery, which I was still on the original 12-volt, believe it or not. It was still kicking for me. We also replaced the BCM. So went through a bunch of hardware and software approaches. Majd actually was one of the first people that was sort of called upon to help with this. And it's a really interesting story, and one that we're going to dive into at greater length, because I think it's important for all of us to sort of recap this and get a greater understanding as to how the community sort of rallied pull together to come up with solutions for this, and just the amount of time that the techs spent both in the shop and outside of the shop, researching, talking to each other, working with folks in different parts of the world, just really throwing everything at the table to try and figure out what this could be.
So BCM, that's a battery control module. I want to make sure our listeners understand that.
Yeah.
And Majd, for those that aren't familiar, he's one of the developers of OceanLink Pro, and has a Facebook group, indicating such. So you said, let me look at the invoice here. I mean, you don't have to get too personal about this, but sure. You had to pay for all this.
I did. Yeah. It's the worst part of the situation at this particular moment is, to spend several $1,000s on a repair. And most importantly, to know that the repair is not actually repaired. That's I think the hardest part of this. But, thankfully, at least for, I'm in the part of the Higgins Berman Chase cohort. And at this stage, I think it's pretty safe to say that I have done everything that I can in my power to keep this car on the road. As of right now, it has 32,623 miles on it.
Oh.
So, having to pay this amount of money for things that, quite frankly, should still be very much under warranty is frustrating. But I don't think I would have been able to sort of live with the car without going through all of this, and now have a pretty good feeling that there's something that is larger, that is not solvable or fixable at this particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's a good reason for me to have Chase take this car back, and then I can try and source one without these issues. Obviously, mine is a very early build, and so it's quite possible that this is related to that. But really, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting when we get Dorian on to dive in with this a little bit further.
Right, that's the other point we talked about before. Dorian will be coming on the podcast to talk about sort of the trials and tribulations of what he went through. But going back to what you said, that that Facebook post of that fellow in believe in Kentucky that got stuck in his car, and that kind of I knew about this before. I had seen the video about how to fashion the pull loop, the mechanical release, the emergency release, and the rear hatch, which is, for those that don't know, that's not accessible. It's part of the mechanism, but it's not accessible. It
Correct.
Wasn't deployed as a feature. There are a couple videos out there that show you how to get access and to create your own emergency loop. I'm going to work on that this weekend. It just that entrapment thing, not entrapment. Well, I guess it was for that person. think that is so bad. There's got to be
Yeah,
something
it's
there.
probably the worst. It's like honestly, I've owned a lot of cars, driven a lot of cars over the years. I'm very much a car guy. I've never experienced anything like that. And in fact, when I was posting about this on the forums, several months ago when this all first started, there was I forget who the person was who commented like, "Wait, these doors, you can't even get the doors to open when you cut all power. Like you can't, like you've literally removed power. You've done everything you can. You can't get these doors to open. That's really bad.
Yeah,
like that's not that's not a simple problem. And I've jokingly been saying, who needs the doors to open anyway? It's just like I'm driving around in an electric General Lee. But the reality is it's too high for me to jump in through the windows and do all the kinds of fun stuff that those guys were doing. So having a car with your doors welded shut, probably not the most practical and prudent mode of transport for most. And given that this has happened with me, and now this gentleman in Kentucky, not knowing for certain that these are exactly the same thing, but the end result is basically the
and they
same.
had to use the jaws of life to open his door.
Yeah, I mean, you got to cut the doors open. That's that's more extreme. That's a level that beyond what I need now. I just crawled in and out of the back, which was opening, but the fact that this is not just something that I've dealt with now, but we're probably seeing some others. It would be really good for us to have an in-depth conversation or talk about how what did we learn and what did they learn from this? What did they learn from working on this for a couple of months?
Right.
Just because we didn't solve the problem doesn't mean that there weren't things that were learned through this that could help with X, Y, or Z or other stuff.
So jump into another topic here. I know there's progress being made with the OceanLink Pro app because I'm actually doing some beta testing for it. And I'll just leave it there. Was invited in and did a couple tests this weekend.
And it's been working well?
It's looking good, yeah.
Good.
They're working through, just working through everything. And I think it's outstanding effort. And the changes they made were like really rapid fire to get things working for me. So we'll leave it at that. That's going to have some kind of big reveal here soon to at least the FOA community at some point soon. But hey,
and we'll have the guys on to talk about
right, exactly
around that once the app is out, and we'll bring on Maj and Guillaume and Mitch and really dive into what went into this, all the work, all the sort of iterations, and then what's the future look like. I think that is, having something like this finally even be at this state from where we were is, it's pretty amazing.
Sure is.
Yeah.
And then just today I became aware, and as you did too, of an article that came out in PC Magazine. It's available online too. You search for the title, Fisker EVs Lose Connectivity Post-Bankruptcy Inside the Failed Rescue Plan. The reporter did a really well-balanced series of interviews that covered the topic very well. So I would encourage anybody who wants to see, because it's really sort of hard to piece together all this. Even for me, I'm kind of close to these issues, being within sort of the inner circle at FOA and working on the podcast and things like that with you. But this covered it really well. I think it's somewhat of a lengthy article, but it's a lengthy topic, and I think it covered all the highlights very well.
Yeah, I think having coverage like this coming out in sort of more established or mainstream publications, the ability for this to, these types of things are going to get picked up and sort of shared out through aggregators. These are the types of outlets and initiatives that I think are going to pay off in dividends for all of us collectively within the Owners Association, just in terms of outlining all of the work that's been done the importance of being a member of this, why we're doing all of this, what our motivations are, all of that. I think, we had Miles on a podcast recently. He's sort of a perfect example of why we're doing this, of sort of this next second round of owners coming in that are new to this experience, this ride, this journey, and either have new thoughts, new ideas, or just need to catch up on everything that has been done up to this point. And so the awareness side of this and making sure that people are educated on the sort of, the arc of how we all arrived at this point, and then what we're going to be able to do or not do together moving forward. I think it's, getting these types of stories out into the press should, I hope, pay off and be very valuable. Again, these are like, this is such an interesting and unique story,
right?
Generally. So,
and just to be sure, Fisker Owners Association did send out an advisory on the cutoff at 10:19 p.m. Eastern. So I was only just minutes ahead of the official announcement, and I believe this advisory went out to members of the FOA. So if you weren't a member, you probably didn't get this advisory, but you probably didn't have connectivity anyway. That's my understanding. And we did, Andrew and I did an Ocean Currents podcast, a special episode, special edition for members only, where we did talk with Miles, Jay, and Sybil, and got a lot of the summary and of what's going on, what's led up to this. That's available for members only. You can also find a link to it if you're a member in the members only email.
It's a good show. We recommend it. Even though the vote or the cutoff happened before we were able to vote, and before I think everyone was able to probably listen to the show. What I learned through that, I think you would share these sentiments. I think just getting the background and the history of everything and all the conversations and how we actually arrived at this point. Yeah, that was sort of the best possible outcome we could have had.
Yeah. And I'll say that episode that we did air or that we did record, and I read the article by the reporter who talked to both sides, so to speak. No, nothing shocking. It didn't change my impression of the facts. I think the facts were conveyed in that special podcast the same as they were in the article that was written.
And the article, while we're talking about this, there was also the YouTube video that Adam did on this topic with the gentleman from I'm forgetting his name,
Will Graylin.
Yes, Will from Indigo.
Yep.
And my sort of personal take on it is that it felt very much like it was meant to be sort of an open, uncontested sort of audience for Indigo. And the front part of it felt like it was basically just like an infomercial for Indigo and everything.
Yeah, I think he tried to set the table who Indigo was. And it sounds like an impressive company. I got to be factual about that. Just amazing what they're doing. And they've picked up the management of the cloud and the infrastructure as a project.
I didn't know anything about, honestly, I'd only heard their name and stuff. So as much as it was a bit superfluous to have a lot of that sort of on the front end of the episode, it was also in some ways insightful and understanding just sort of the breadth of everything that Indigo is working on. Yeah.
Very informative. I encourage people to watch it. Everybody's got to make their own mind up, their own decisions from these kind of things, this kind of situation.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's good to have, as much of the information about what has transpired here out in the ether for people to have access to and understand the ebbs and flows of the decision-making process and what has led us or resulted in the situation that we're now
Right.
very much in, as opposed to deciding between one of two different paths.
Yeah. The two different paths, there's a fork in the road and somebody stole the fork.
That's right. Yes. They were like, oh, you want to eat dinner over here? No, you're not gonna be able to do that.
So the town hall did happen. The topics did change. It was pretty quickly, within like 45 minutes, they had broadcast a new agenda. The town hall did happen. There was pretty high engagement. Hundreds of people attended, and it is available for FOA members as a recording, so they can watch it if whatever they missed. And I believe there's also a summary and discourse of the sort of the bullet points, but also if you want to listen to the whole thing, it's available.
And what was, out of curiosity, where were you on that? Like, where, we know a little bit about this.
Mm-hmm.
What would you, if the vote had come to pass, if we would have been given the opportunity, which direction would you have gone?
I would have gone the independent route, and because I I don't know. I was thinking this all weekend. I thought, am I going to say this or not? But I'm going to go ahead. It's sort of like Mr. Rogers has this phrase for kids, like when you're lost, find the helpers.
Find the helpers, yeah.
And I believe the FOA are the helpers. That's the way I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to argue that position. I think the more I came to learn of the structure of that relationship, the costs associated with it, the way that those contracts were established and being managed, it seemed sort of very challenging for me to rationalize that cost. And I think it would have been very difficult to be able to sell that through to prospective buyers. I mean, we're sitting here talking about, the cost of repairs and things to that degree. If now on top of it, all right, so it's costing this, nothing's covered under warranty, the parts are impossible, and I'm paying $12,000 a year to keep the car. I'm making up a number, but a significant amount of money to keep the car connected. I think that really is probably a step further than almost anybody would be willing to go. So it was hard. I would have been hard pressed to find a way to vote for the other path. But I could probably be convinced if someone was able to make a good argument to me on it.
Yeah.
I just don't know what it is.
Being disconnected has not made a difference, except I can't just push Spotify from the app control panel and play music from the car.
Right.
I can play music from my phone. Yeah.
Being disconnected is really only impacting the native applications, the ones that are built into the car itself.
Right.
You can still Bluetooth to your phone and use whatever applications you want in there, just like you were doing before. So if you are still fond of TuneIn or Spotify or iHeart, the good news is all three of them are available as apps on your phone that you can very easily replace them. My guess is if you set up those services for the first time through Fisker, then that means you set up an account for them. So just, log in and bring your account information over to the app. And at least this way you can sort of keep things copacetic there. It's been interesting to see. I think Sybil has been trying to rig up some manner of, like almost like a MiFi type of situation to have wireless internet in her car. So people, I think, are trying different things at this particular moment to see if there are workarounds on this connectivity disconnect, so to speak. But quite frankly, I don't even know if there is, there's probably not a reason to waste too much time, effort, energy trying to figure out what that path looks like, because if we are going to have to redo much of the UI and sort of the infotainment setup itself as we go. And I think that's part of what's being discussed. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn or not, but I don't think that long term the plan would be for everything to sort of stay the way it is on the screen. But again, I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
And so it is not hypercritical for the applications itself. And obviously, I'm saying this as a former TuneIn employee. If I was still working at TuneIn, I would say, no, we want to keep everything there. We need to make sure that it's very specific. But the reality is, I think you'll still be able to find all the same content.
Yeah.
Just doing it through a sort of a tethered fashion.
And hey, FM radio still works.
FM radio still works really
hard
well.
Hardware in the car. Yeah.
Yep, that is there, and something that is pretty bulletproof, even though it's not the easiest interface.
The reception isn't that good.
Say again?
Yeah, the interface is rough, and the reception isn't that good.
The interface, well, unfortunately, as someone who has worked in radio now for 25 years, one of the things that I have unfortunately been tracking is the sort of consistent degradation of the hardware being installed into new autos, especially in the last probably 20 years or so. So, honestly, going back to like the early 2000s, you're going to have a better radio in a 2004 Volvo than you're going to have in a 2024 Fisker.
Yeah.
And that's especially true in the EV space, where a lot of radio equipment, the actual hardware that would need to go in to the cars themselves just isn't even installed. And this is cost savings. This is, keeping up with the trends as people move towards more streaming environments. Do they really still need AM FM? The reality is it's still touched by like 80 some odd % of the populace on a weekly basis. And most of that is in car. It is still the experience that people naturally gravitate towards first. And so the idea that newer cars aren't meeting the users there is somewhat problematic. But I can't fight that battle. That one is beyond me, and I've accepted that loss. So that's it for the day. I think we just wanted to jump on and make sure that we were, up to date and up to speed with everything that's happened, especially given the cloud disconnect and all of that back and forth over the last couple of days. We've got a couple of really fun episodes coming up and planned here, especially one focused on international market and trying to get that recorded here as soon as possible for the very large community that we have over the pond. And then obviously, talking about the OceanLink Pro, right? Upon that release and working with the development team and the folks that have been so integral into getting that out for us. And
getting your car tech on.
Oh yes. And Dorian. Exactly. Yeah. So I think, we've got a couple of really interesting topics coming up and things that I think are going to be valuable to the community here.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks members, thanks owners, thanks drivers, thanks interested parties. We'll try to do our best to keep reporting the good stuff as well as the not so good stuff.
It's all there.
Yep.
Thanks everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.